Welcome once again to Liberty Global Reports. I am Arthur Brooks. You can see the stations and the channels we broadcast on, hopefully at the bottom of your screen any moment from now. There we go. Today we look at, as usual, some of the news reports that are featured on the world news around the world from the past week. I'm joined in the studio by my very good friend, Rasheed Onyiangi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brooks.
Good afternoon. Before we go ahead, let's watch our global newspaper review. The UK Financial Times on Monday carries a front-page article about Russian government crackdown on protests in Moscow, the Russian capital. Marches in their thousands were protesting against corruption by leading Russian politicians, including the Prime Minister Medvedev and President Putin. Yesterday's UK Guardian newspaper carries a front-page article titled "Unrealistic to Demand Police Access to WhatsApp," in which the British Home Secretary Amber Rudd states that police should be given access to WhatsApp messages on people's phones in criminal or terrorist cases. This has become a controversial issue as WhatsApp, with one of the best encryption systems, makes it virtually impossible for third parties such as police to access the information. Opposition politicians and other groups opposing the Home Secretary say that her demand was disproportional and unrealistic. The front page also includes a picture of members of a Women's March remembering the victims of last week's killing at the Houses of Parliament in London. The Australian newspaper from Australia yesterday carries a front page picture and article titled "North Korean Missile Crisis, Bishop Told Australia in Firing Line for Nuclear Attack." The UK Observer on Sunday carries a picture of a young Iraqi girl cut up in the war, together with the headline "Mosul Assault Halted as Fury Grows Over Civilian Deaths." The Iraqi government forces yesterday halted its assault on the ISIS-controlled city of Mosul, following global criticism of the mass killing of civilians, including an allegation that USA warplanes bombed and killed hundreds of civilians accidentally during a recent attack. The UK Guardian on Saturday carries a front-page article and picture of Khalid Masood, the lone 52-year-old British killer who drove across Westminster Bridge in the heart of London last week, mowing down and killing 4 people and injuring dozens, then knifed to death an unarmed policeman guarding the entrance to the Houses of Parliament. He was immediately shot dead by police on duty nearby. And that's all from our global newspaper review for this week. That's it. That's our newspaper report for this week, Tuesday, 28th of March, 2017. There's a number of stories trending in the news this week. One of them, which we talked about before last week, is the British exit from the European Union, known as Brexit, British exit. Tomorrow I should say, the British Prime Minister triggers the Brexit, the Article 50, which has to be done by the current government, and it was a 2-year process, in which time it'll take 2 years for Britain to separate from the European Union. Apparently it takes so long because so many laws have to be disentangled from the British law. And it's not an easy thing, apparently. Rasheed, do you have any thoughts on Brexit?
Well, I thought marriage was easy. It appears divorce is even more difficult, especially when it comes to building, connecting societies. I'm sure a lot of Britons will be wishing now that they haven't voted to get out of the European Union. Well, we've gone over that, how they feel they have been deceived into getting out of the European Union. But it appears that British has gone too deep in, and getting out is going to create its own problem. And as you said, it takes 2 years for that divorce to become final. And in the process of disconnecting Britain from the rest of European community, economically and legally, a lot of work has to be done in reversing or repealing some of the laws that tied them together in the first place. It's likely to be a very messy situation, and
as most divorces are.
As most divorces, yes, because it's also a lesson for social engineers who want to connect societies together, to look at the implication going forward of what will happen if, this thing, someone just decide to opt out. I mean, European Union has always been beset by balancing nationalism with the community interest. And it appears that any other country that wants to get out of this will have to think very, very deeply before doing it. And there are economic implications. Britain will become truly an island now, in terms of its relationship with Europe. I hope there is a way, maybe in 100 years, that they can vote to get back in.
But I think it may be under a different European Union. It's been a very uneasy marriage.
Yes, but the EU, you have to understand, is an evolving concept. That it wasn't, the EU we have today is not the EU we have when it started. Yes. So, and that evolution will always continue. And I hope that when it does reach a stage, Britain will want to get back in, because it's for the benefit of everybody.
My guest of 2 weeks ago, that's Saidu Carpenter, likened British exit to an old matronly lady with a large family being attracted by a gentleman from the United States. I think he was referring to Donald Trump. And she wants to leave her children, who were he referred to the Commonwealth, and go and
well, that will even be more ironic, because it will pretty much put Britain not as a partner of the United States, but more about as another satellite of the United States.
Satellite,
and that's really a historical irony.
But ironically, a lot of British people feel it's a good thing, and I think it's part of this mindset, which is even going on in America. Oh yes, we can do things better alone, which is, to me, nonsense, because you always do better in coordination and in cohesion with other people.
So
normally,
how come America has not withdrawn from NATO? Yes, I agree. NATO is a military alliance, but it's not strictly a military alliance now, because the reason that caused NATO to be formed is no longer there. So it has formed itself into something completely different.
Okay, let's move on. This Brexit thing will trend and trend. This week, today in fact, only a few hours ago, I saw a report on Reuters that a gentleman called Ahmed Kathrada, if I pronounce it right, who is a Kathrada, who is an Asian living in South Africa, born and bred in South Africa, and apparently a very close confidant of the late Nelson Mandela. And in fact, he shared prison with Nelson Mandela. He spent a total of 26 years in Robben Island and Pollsmoor Prison. So I guess it's a historic event as these old soldiers, shall we say, pass away. What do you think, Rasheed?
Well, Kathrada, as you said, he spent 26 years, which is a year more than Mandela himself spent in prison. So these are the unsung heroes of anti-apartheid movement. Mandela was the most visible symbol, but there are others equally important, equally active, and who have equally sacrificed to end apartheid in South Africa, and Ahmed Kathrada is one of them. It also points to the fact that anti-apartheid wasn't a black-only issue. That's why they call South Africa today a rainbow nation. Even whites, South African whites, there were many of them who were against the apartheid policy, and they fought actively against apartheid. And Katrada is an Asian, and you don't forget we have like 3 major racial composition in South Africa: the black, the so-called colored, and the whites.
And the Asians.
Where the colored are kind of a mix between white Asians, mainly Indians, people of Indian descent. So basically South Africa has come of age, and I don't see any eventuality of apartheid ever returning to that part of the world.
But still, it's still an issue in a way.
Yes.
The attitudes,
but
both sides of the racial.
Yes, but the issue is development focused now, and it's something that visionary leadership cannot solve. Mandela wasn't coming to provide that development focused leadership. He was merely there to heal the wounds of injustice that apartheid has caused, and he has done that to a large extent. But then, in terms of development, we've seen a lot of missteps by the predominantly black dominated administrations of South Africa.
But still, South Africa is still going through political upheaval.
Yes, definitely. But all are focused on the issues of opportunity, development, and balance in terms of apartheid. We continue to have the impact of apartheid will continue to reverberate for years to come, because a lot of rebuilding needs to be done.
Even on the issue of the xenophobia with Nigerians.
Yes, that is an important issue, and it is at the level of social psychology. It shouldn't even be happening, but years of oppression of the apartheid has actually created a social psychological mindset that I think what do you call it? Franz Fanon calls it the pecking order.
Yes.
It's extremely disturbing that black South Africans will turn against other blacks, forgetting that
it wasn't them
who are the basic cause of their predicament.
And I'll always remember this chap Ahmed. Sorry about that. He was at Nelson Mandela's burial, and he gave a very good tribute, very nice, very emotional tribute to Nelson Mandela, and how he himself felt he'd lost a brother. Very emotional. Let's move on to something, shall I say, completely different. For the first time in a number of years, London had a problem last Friday, I think it was it? Where a gentleman named of Khalid Masood, although he has a number of aliases, a British-born, 52-year-old man, not a young radical, decided to take a hired car and drive it down across Westminster Bridge near the Houses of Parliament. In the process, mowed down some 40 people, killing 4, and then crashed the car into the fence of the Westminster Palace in London. And I think we have a video to show on this from Reuters.
About 2:40 p.m. London time, a car driving over Westminster Bridge plows into horrified pedestrians. Witnesses described the carnage.
There were people on the ground the whole length of the bridge. I saw people flying in the air.
Authorities estimate at least 40 people are hurt, including 3 police officers, some with, quote, catastrophic injuries.
How badly injured was the person that you saw?
To be honest, the one I've seen, there is one person who wasn't moving at all.
One woman ends up in the River Thames. She's later rescued with serious injuries. The attacker speeds over the bridge, heading towards Parliament, passes Big Ben, and then crashes into a railing around the Parliament complex. But the attack is not over. He exits the car and runs through an open gate, heading towards Parliament armed with a knife.
A guy came past my right shoulder with a big knife and just started plunging it into the policeman. I've never seen anything like that. I just can't believe it.
The attacker is able to stab an unarmed policeman before he is shot by responding officers. One photo from the scene is of a man on a gurney being treated for injuries, multiple knives strewn about the ground below him. It's unclear at this point who he is. A medical helicopter lands amid the chaos in New Palace Yard. Authorities so far haven't confirmed to CNN who was airlifted out, but we do know, tragically, the policeman died from his wounds. His name was Keith Palmer, a 15-year veteran. 3 others also died in the attack. The assailant also dies from gunshot wounds. Authorities almost immediately called the attack an act of terror.
Terrorists have a clear aim. That is to create discord, distrust and to create fear. The police stand with all communities in the UK and will take action against anybody who seeks to undermine society, especially where their crimes are motivated by hate.
There it is, rather a tragic developments in the heart of London where you least expected. I think the last terrorist attack in London was, there was one Nigerian-born guy who killed a soldier.
Almost similar circumstances.
Similar, very similar, although a car wasn't involved. And the last previous major offence was when a group of terrorists boarded buses and trains and blew themselves up, killing about 50 people. That was in 2007. So, what drives people? What drives people, Rasheed,
Well, it's hard to say because I'm not a terrorist. But
then again, what is a terrorist?
Well, as the police commissioner there said, that their major aim is to sow discord, distrust, and terror and fear among the people. Now people will be afraid to walk that Westminster Bridge. And it's still not clear whether it's a lone wolf attack or whether, but what is clear is that this man was obviously inspired by the violent ideology of groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram, so we all know where that is coming from. And by the way, he's a convert to Islam.
Yeah.
And he has a record of violent behavior.
Yeah.
He has actually served jail time several times, for violent knife attacks. Also, though it was said that when he changed to Islam, his behavior changed, but it appears that it's probably just changed for the worse. But it's hard because, surprisingly, just to show how blind the terrorist ideology is, one of the people killed in this attack her name is Aisha. One was a tourist, who was on an honeymoon with his wife. He died. The wife survived with a broken leg. So this is a very heinous attack. You can't even, the idea of just taking a walk on the street, is now. Everybody will be living in fear, and that is really the aim of the typical terrorist. That's
of the organizations who are encouraging this.
You think more about them than the people who are supposed to protect you. And these attacks are so random that no amount of intelligence can predict or stop them. You can minimize the damage after it has started. Imagine what would happen if he had not been gunned down by a policeman. He will have gone on killing anybody that comes in his path. And this is a terrible situation that we have, and it recalls our own predicament in Nigeria here, where after Boko Haram was dislodged in Sambisa, you see a series of random attacks against innocent, unarmed civilians, which is quite unfortunate.
It's also unfortunate that the publicity that the West gets is not in proportion to the number of people involved. And here in Nigeria, 20, 30 people die, and but then again, even if one person dies, it's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy.
And I wonder the definition of a terrorist. Do we tend to label people who have religious, particularly Islamic?
No, it's obvious.
As a terrorist,
it's obvious now that it is no longer a religiously. It's not a religiously motivated act. It is not. Yes, religious does play a part, because in shaping the kind of ideology that we have seen terrorists push forward. But ultimately, if you examine the religion that they claim is informing their actions, the religion actually is completely contrary to what they're preaching.
It's merely something to a carriage for the perpetrators. It's nothing to do with the religion. Okay, that's our time is apparently up. For more global reports, please join us next Tuesday, same time, same place. And thanks again to my crew in the studio and in the control room. And thanks again to my very good friend and guest, Rasheed Onyiangi. As me, Arthur Brooks, signing off for another week. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.